Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us for another forum entitled Tourism Diplomacy, Rebuilding Tourism Safely, hosted by the Knowledge Network of the Tourism Linkages Network in the Tourism Enhancement Fund, an agency of the Ministry of Tourism. One of the objectives of the Knowledge Network is to stimulate and support a strengthened tourism product through strategic information. The theme for today's forum, Tourism Diplomacy, Rebuilding Tourism Safely, is one way we intend to disseminate critical information needed to rebuild and strengthen our tourism product as we collectively work to rebuild visitor arrivals as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Pre-COVID tourism arrivals, that is 2019, for Jamaica, stood at over 4.3 million visitors, both cruise and land-based. Prior to the pandemic, Jamaica's visitor arrivals have seen continuous growth year over year. With the various restrictions imposed by our main source markets, along with our own local restrictions, visitor arrival numbers for 2020 was approximately 1.3 million. Since the start of 2021, we have welcomed just over 87,000 land-based visitors, bearing in mind that cruise shipping has not started up as yet. Over the period of the pandemic, there has been a pent-up demand for return to normalcy, of which travel and tourism is one of the most desired things to do. Jamaica has implemented numerous safety measures to safeguard our citizens, including our tourism workers and also our visitors. Since the introduction of vaccines, along with the improvements in science and the various updates from the World Health Organization, the WHO, and the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, more persons living in our source markets have developed the confidence that it is time to restart their lives and get back to some level of normalcy. However, those persons desire a level of assurance that they're traveling to a safe destination where safety protocols are in place and there is reasonably high vaccination of its citizens. In preparation for this resurgence of visitor arrivals and to increase destination assurance, our Minister of Tourism, Honorable Edmund Bartlett, and our JHTA President, Mr. Clifton Reeder, have engaged with Ministry of Health officials to have our tourism workers included in the priority groupings for vaccination. In the last vaccination blitz in April, we saw several thousands of tourism workers eagerly receiving their first shots as they, among others, want to be proactive and remain healthy in the COVID fight, and also to see the return of visitors to our island. These tourism workers represented a wide cross-section of the industry, from hotels, attractions, transportation, companies, airlines, craft vendors, just to name a few. We commend them for taking this responsible step. Today's forum seeks to create greater awareness of the recovery strategies, including the marketing of the destination, as we have seen wonderful and exciting Jamaica ads on mainstream media in the US. The pace of our forward bookings or visitor arrival numbers are increasing for the summer season. So we're excited. Today's panel includes our distinguished and well-admired Tourism Minister, the Honorable Edmund Bartlett, who, as I mentioned before, has played a critical role in securing vaccinations for our tourism workers. Our JHTA President, Mr. Clifton Reeder, Mr. Kyle Mays, General Manager of the Jamaica Inn Resort in Ocho Rios, Mr. Donovan White, our Director of Tourism, and Professor Peter Figueroa, Professor of Public Health, Epidemiology, and HIV/AIDS at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. We will first start with opening remarks from our minister, to be followed by the various presenters. Each presenter will be allotted 15 minutes for their presentation, after which we will open up for questions and answers. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat window, and we'll take them at the end of the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now introduce you to our Honorable Minister. The Honorable Edmund Bartlett, CDMP, has given over 40 years of service to Jamaica, working both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. Minister Bartlett was first appointed Minister of Tourism in 2007, serving until December 2011, and returned to the helm of the Ministry of Tourism in his second dispensation, as he would normally say, in 2016. Minister Bartlett has served as Vice Chairman of the UNWTO Executive Council and Chair of the Executive Council of the affiliates, as well as Vice Chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, the CTO. He is presently the Chair of the Regional Commission of the Americas since being appointed in May 2019, and the founder and co-chair of the Global Tourism and Resilience Crisis Management Center located at the University of the West Indies. Tourism has been positioned by Minister Bartlett as a catalyst for economic growth and the transformation of communities. To this end, he highlighted 5 networks: gastronomy, shopping, health and wellness, sports and entertainment, and knowledge within the tourism sector, and initiated the Tourism Linkages Network to strengthen sustainable linkages between tourism and other sectors of the economy. Minister Bartlett's numerous awards, which are many, include Tourism Minister of the Year for Sustainable Tourism by the Pacific Area Travel Writers Association in 2018, IIPT Champions in Challenge Award in 2018, Caribbean Tourism Minister of the Year at the Caribbean Travel Awards in 2017, Caribbean Tourism Minister of Distinction Award in 2016, the Caribbean's leading personality for outstanding services to tourism in 2016, conferred with the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander, CD, for outstanding and important services to Jamaica in 2012, and conferred with the Commander of Number of the Order of Civil Merit of Spain on the Order of the King of Spain in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, I now introduce to you the Honorable Tourism Minister, Honorable Edmund Bartlett.
Thank you very much, Moderator, Chairman of the Tourism Linkage Network, or Knowledge Network, Omar Robinson, and perhaps I should indicate the longest serving president of the JHTA, having served for 4 consecutive terms. And so much happened under his watch. And I was want to use the moment to offer my congratulations to him, because in the pre-COVID period, he helped us to grow tourism exponentially, and indeed position Jamaica as being the fastest growing tourism destination in the English-speaking Caribbean. Our distinguished president now, Clifton Reeder, and I didn't say that, Clifton, for you to feel that you have some big shoes that you have to step into, but perhaps they are.
Big indeed, Minister.
Professor, my distinguished friend from way back at the university days, Professor Figueroa. So happy that you're able to join us and to help us benefit from the wealth of your knowledge, experience. Donovan White, our Director of Tourism, Kyle Mays, the General Manager of Jamaica Inn, and my Executive Director from TEF, Kerry Wallace, and of course, my hard-working Director of Linkage and Network, this is Carolyn McDonald-Riley. Ladies and gentlemen from Cyberland, as the global community tries to navigate its second year of disruption, instability, and deep economic recession linked to the ongoing pandemic, global attention has now largely shifted to identifying the conditions that are necessary to facilitate economic recovery in the safest and shortest possible time. Against the backdrop of this objective, the year 2021 has been marked by an aggressive global push by world leaders and the scientific community to develop and supply large volumes of clinically approved vaccine to countries across the world. As of May 2021, more than 1.06 billion vaccine doses have been administered worldwide, equivalent of 40 doses for every 100 persons. The World Health Organization has noted that at least 7 different vaccines across 3 platforms have been rolled out across countries globally. More than 200 additional vaccine candidates are in development, of which more than 60 are in clinical development. It is expected that several billion doses of vaccine will be produced globally throughout 2021. This is undoubtedly a promising development. In terms of the global battle against the pandemic, we are certainly in a much better place than we were several months ago. Nonetheless, there is, however, a serious emerging concern that must be urgently addressed if the global vaccination drive is to maintain its integrity and achieve the desired results of global COVID-19 herd immunity. The world's poorest countries are now faced with the risk of becoming victims of a great moral failure linked to the acutely inequitable distribution of vaccine supplies globally. The reality is that only 7.3% of the world's population of over 7 billion people have received at least one dose of vaccine to date. This is in light of the warning from epidemiological experts that more than 75% of the world's population will need to be vaccinated to bring the pandemic fully under control. More significantly, 48%, or nearly half of doses administered so far, have gone to high-income countries, or just 16% of the world's population. That's very important to know. While 1 in 4 persons in high-income countries have now been vaccinated against COVID-19, only 1 in more than 500 persons in poorer countries have received a jab. Based on the current trend of vaccine inequity, it is estimated that the world's poorest 92 countries will not be able to reach a vaccination rate of 60% of their population until 2023 or later. What this means is that realistically, any possibility of global herd immunity is likely many months, if not years away, which could extend the crisis indefinitely. From a regional perspective, tourism writer David Jessup notes that while some Caribbean nations, most notably Cayman Islands, Aruba, and Montserrat, have fully vaccinated significant percentages of their population, vaccine rollout in most of the independent Caribbean lags far behind. The estimates provided indicate that Antigua has administered at least one dose to 30% of its population. Barbados and Dominica, 25%, St. Kitts, 22%, Guyana, 14%, St. Vincent, 13%, St. Lucia and Grenada, 11%, Belize, 10%, the Dominican Republic, 9%, Suriname, 6%, the Bahamas, 6%, Jamaica at that time, 5%, and Trinidad, 2%. Considering then the now presumed importance of vaccination to global stability, leaders in the Caribbean and in other parts of the developing world must come together to project strength and a unified voice in raising our concern in all international fora about vaccine inequity. Indeed, the current state of vaccine inequity has to be dramatically reversed, as global economic recovery efforts cannot be accorded and afforded, in fact, to be delayed or prolonged for years, especially among the worst affected regions. The tourism sector in particular must be at the forefront of the global campaign against vaccine inequity. The tourism sector supports 1 in every 10 jobs globally. This translates to over 330 million jobs, of which roughly 60 to 120 million have already been lost since last year. Tourism-dependent economies, such as those in the Caribbean, have already lost 12% of their GDP compared to global economic contraction of only 4.4%. So tourism is the engine of growth in the Caribbean, and its prolonged disruption constitutes an economic catastrophe with rippling effects for all segments of our national economies. Indeed, the millions of citizens who both directly and indirectly depend on tourism for their economic livelihoods are desperate to be thrown a lifeline. Credible evidence now suggests that tourism has earned the status of an industry that is too big to fail. It is therefore imperative that the sector survives during and beyond the current crisis so that it can continue to fulfill its vital role as a significant catalyst of global economic recovery and growth. The tourism industry, at both the global and regional levels, must speak up about the vaccine inequity louder than it already has, and assume a more significant role in tackling the issues if the industry is to return to any sense of normality, as without vaccine equity, there will be no travel recovery. Obviously, the sooner the pandemic ends, the sooner people will start traveling again and generate valuable income for the citizens of host countries. The industry, thus, has a vested interest in making sure that recovery happens as quickly as possible. Importantly, persons within the industry have platforms, connection, expertise, and global influence, and are therefore able to articulate clearly and loudly to policymakers about the consequences of how things are going and also how they can function in a more morally appropriate manner. The tourism industry, in fact, has a moral obligation to speak for the millions of tourism workers across the region and the world who are facing unprecedented hardships. In the final analysis, if Caribbean economic recovery is to begin this year, if employment is to be restored and tourism returned in a significant way, many more vaccines need to be made available very soon. The issue of vaccine supply is therefore not just for protecting public health, but for longer-term economic recovery and stability. If the global distribution of vaccine becomes significantly equitable throughout the rest of this year, there is a strong possibility that the return of tourism to near normal levels by year-end and beyond will be quite possible. Indeed, we can see a significant boost in tourism arrival as we head into 2021 winter season if we address this pressing matter of vaccine inequity. In the interim, as Minister of Tourism, I will continue to make the case for frontline tourism workers to be among the priority groups for early vaccination, with the hope that most will in fact be fully vaccinated in short order. This will be critical, I think, in terms of ensuring that we are able to gain the confidence of the millions of persons from markets with high vaccination rates who may travel shortly. And indeed, we want to make the point that destination Jamaica is safe and that there's very little risk of infection in coming here. Therefore, the general competitiveness of our tourism sector will be linked to efficacy and speed of vaccination within the sector. I think that we have now a full sense of how critical it is for us to not only advocate for vaccine equity, but to ensure that vaccine hesitancy is reduced or eliminated. And therein lies the rub. I look forward to this very, very robust discussion that will ensue, and that together we can find a way to full recovery. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Well said. Your 2 points about vaccine equity and vaccine hesitancy are very important. We need to have access to the vaccines. However, and I know the government is working hard to secure vaccines. However, when these vaccines come, we want to ensure that as many of our Jamaicans get vaccinated. And I know I was worried about my 93-year-old mother getting her vaccine, and she got it. And she's like, you know, when we're observing her, she's like, why are you guys worried? I didn't even feel anything. She got her injection. That's what she said, her injection. You know, and she's fine. So I encourage other members of our society to get vaccinated. I will receive my second dose tomorrow, and I'm excited about that, so I can return to some level of normalcy. So those 2 points, Minister, equity, vaccine equity, and vaccine hesitancy are very important. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We now move over to Mr. Clifton Reeder, or JHTA President. Now, Clifton was promoted to Managing Director of Moon Palace, Jamaica in November 2016. Palace Resort's first property outside of Mexico. In his role as Managing Director, Mr. Reeder oversees the overall operation of the resort, including staff development, budgeting, and guest satisfaction. He is also tasked with overseeing the new projects of the resort. The 2020 to 2021 president of the Jamaica Hotel and Tourists Association, JHTA. He also serves as a counselor for the Ocho Rios Runaway Bay chapter of the JHTA. Mr. Reeder's impressive hospitality career spans over 3 decades among various local and international hotels. Prior to his post as director of Moon Palace, Jamaica, he served as general manager of Sunset Jamaica Grand Resort and Spa, as general manager of Beaches Negril Resort and Spa, and Beaches Sandy Bay. I remember those days, Mr. Reeder, you were my boss. Reeder brings a deep-rooted understanding of the local market and region, valuable experience, and great enthusiasm to his post at Moon Palace, Jamaica. Mr. Reeder serves as the president of the Moon Palace Foundation, the social and welfare arm of the Moon Palace Jamaica Grant. The 5 areas of focus are health, wellness, education, environment, and dreams. Its mission is to improve the lives of individuals, especially that of the staff and their families and the communities in which the resort does business. The foundation provides assistance, referral, or financial support to enhance the health, welfare, education, and happiness of these persons, as well as to raise environmental awareness. Ladies and gentlemen, our JHTA President, Mr. Clifton Reeder.
Thank you very much, Omar. Minister, thank you for the invite, and Director, colleagues, thank you very much. This morning, looking at the topic, the return of tourism with vaccinated workers. Minister alluded to the fact that Omar and team set up one of the best safety network for the industry. The establishment of the resilient corridors stretching from Negril to Port Antonio, Kingston, all the way back to Westmoreland via St. Elizabeth. This corridor, through TPDCO, had several establishments certified as COVID ready institutions, so that guests could have the confidence that whenever they're booking a villa, a hotel, or going to a restaurant, that they would be certified entities. The protocols following the corridors were just, and still are, just as important in keeping our guests, our staff, and families in terms of community safe for the last year. To date, we have no known transmission between staff and guests. We've had positive staff, but they more than likely trace back to community spread rather than some kind of transmission within the facilities. Recently, we surveyed 26 of our major properties, and we realized that the positivity rate for guests going back to the US, as you know, we have to do antigen tests on every single guest going back to the US. So it's almost a 100% sample size, and the positivity rate was seen to be less than 1%. And to me, this is excellent, excellent news that should permeate all of Jamaica and the world. There are three categories of workers, and we did a survey to look at the acceptance of vaccines. We surveyed 3,040 tourism employees, to include the attractions, drivers, craft marketers, and of course, hotel workers. There are those who are ready to take the vaccine, and 35% fell in that category. Those fence sitters, the wait and sees, they numbered 42%, and those refusing to take the vaccine, 23%. There are also three categories of guests: those who are not vaccinated, those who have gotten one shot, and those who are fully vaccinated. But when you look at our destination, or the places where all of the destinations put together within the Caribbean and our competitors, Mexico, DOMREP, we have those whose nationals are less than 30% vaccinated, and those between 30 and 60% vaccinated. And of course, we have those reaching herd immunity, as Minister mentioned, some of the ABC islands, Cayman, Bermuda, Turks and Caicos. Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is that everyone's preference would be to go to destinations with full herd immunity in order to lessen their risk of catching the virus. This is the main reason we should educate our team members to the fact that vaccination could be a catalyst in the continued growth of the tourism sector. Several thousand tourism employees were vaccinated during the Blitz. However, that caused quite a demand, because after 2 weeks, those employees sitting on the fence and the 23% of those who said that they would not take the vaccine have changed their minds. In fact, we have good reason to believe that 35% of the 42% who were sitting on the fence are now ready to take the vaccine. Another 10% of the 23% are also ready, which would give us a great acceptance in terms of people wanting to take the vaccine. This could take us into herd immunity, assuming we are able to secure vaccines in the quantities required for the country over the next couple of months. If we continue along the lines of the past Blitz, we could see many more Jamaicans, many more tourism workers vaccinated and be safe and ready to work. We also have many older employees, those over 60, who can go and get themselves vaccinated now, because unfortunately, most of them were out of work because of the high risk, but the government has made it possible for them to be vaccinated at the moment. But as more and more vaccines become available, then we will make sure that tourism is right at the top, ready to be vaccinated. This, ladies and gentlemen, would provide a relatively safe and secure environment for guests looking for, and would allow a more sustained return of tourism without the threats of outbreaks causing disruptions in business. Vaccinated workers would mean relaxation of some protocols, larger gathering, therefore groups, conventions, weddings would see a welcome return. Most of our properties, the EP properties especially, depends on these groups. And right now, especially Kingston, they are really feeling it because of the lack of convention business. But with our teams fully vaccinated, America is already over, I think, over 30% of their population fully vaccinated, ready to go. So we have the market, we have the demand, and I'm sure the director will go into that pent-up demand, ready to travel, and we must make ourselves ready to receive them in a safe way so that we can keep our workers safe, we can keep our guests safe, and in turn, we can keep our communities safe with economic viability. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Reeder. No, I tell you, I was very impressed with the number of persons who tourism workers who turned out eagerly during the last blitz, vaccination blitz, to get their vaccines. And my only regret with that is that we never had more vaccines. And again, this is no fault of the government. I think the government has done a yeoman's job trying to secure vaccines. As we know, there is a vaccine inequity. If you look up north to the US, they're sitting on over 6-7 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccines, which they're not going to use in their population, which, you know, President Biden has said he will, you know, they will donate to other countries of the world. But that 6 or 7 million could easily help, you know, other countries. We see what's happening in India. We see what's happening in you know, some of the other countries. And even in our own situation, that would help us to go a far way. So that would have been my only regret, that we never had those vaccines, as, you know, those persons who were on the fence and they got, you know, they saw that, you know, there was nothing wrong. The efficacy of the vaccine was good, and they were getting excited about taking their vaccine. So we hope that we'll secure some more. I know there was some vaccines that came in, was it last week or the week before? And I know, you know, Minister Bartlett and yourself will continue to push so that we can get as many of our tourism workers vaccinated. So thank you very much, President. We now move into our third presentation, which is by Mr. Kyle Mays, who is the General Manager of the Jamaica Inn, recognized as one of the Caribbean's leading luxury boutique hotels. Recently appointed Chairman of the Health and Wellness Linkages Committee, Mr. Mays brings to the table over 2 decades of extensive hospitality experience in all aspects of both large and small resort and spa operations. An advocate for sustainability, he believes strongly in investing in people and green energy technologies and best practices. By doing so, he has been successful in reducing both operational overheads and the carbon footprint of properties he has managed. As a director of the hotel's philanthropic arm, the Jamaica Inn Foundation, he works to support the local community by investing in projects that focus on education, community, and the environment. Driven by the growing concerns surrounding global warming and other environmental threats, he was instrumental in establishing the White River Fish Sanctuary, where he currently serves as a director. The White River Fish Sanctuary is a community-based partnership designed to help revive the local fisherfolk livelihoods and protect one of Jamaica's biggest natural resources. Always willing to serve, he's very involved with the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, where he has been the chairman for the small hotels and accommodations sector for 3 years. He's a graduate of Bishop's University in Quebec, Canada, where he earned an undergraduate degree in economics, followed by an MBA from Massey University in Auckland, New Zealand. A health and wellness junkie, Kyle is an avid diver and swimmer who loves to indulge in spa therapies. He's the proud father of 4 amazing children. Kyle may never know that. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kyle Mays, our General Manager of Jamaica Inn.
Thank you, Omar. Yes, I've been busier than you thought. I was apparently. But it's great to be on with you today, and I want to thank again Minister for the opportunity. It's great to see well all of our panelists, director, where we tend to see each other a lot these days via this forum. So we hope to get to see you in Ochirio sometime soon again, and looking forward to that. But yes, it's a great privilege, great honor. And I thought what would be useful today is just to really share. Okay, sure. Sorry. Let me find that for you. It should be on. Saying it's on. I'm there. No. Great. Yeah, so I thought I would just share with everybody in the trenches perspective of the small hotels experience as we sort of navigated through all of this, and where we're coming from with this pandemic, where we are now, and of course I know this will bring up a lot of discussions already being thrown out regarding what's the future, where do we go from here with our recovery and all the challenges. So let's jump back a year, little introspective. So when the pandemic first hit last March, thankfully, and as you heard, Jamaica had been experiencing one of our strongest winters in history, and so that from that point on, we really started on this roller coaster ride, and let me tell you, it hasn't been a pleasant or easy one. So back in March again, the vast majority of hotels were forced to shut down, and with no tangible indication of when we would reopen, as the scientific world was coming to terms with this novel coronavirus. So businesses were faced with a quandary at the time. What of our team's welfare, amongst many other things. And thankfully, the government came to our aid by launching, you remember, the care programs, which included the best and set cash. So at the end, we took the decision not to lay off any team members, and we chose the best cash route. This was a big help, and as we struggled to come to terms with all the other mounting fixed costs, but we remained optimistic. So things would return. We didn't know very much at that time, so we felt it was recovery just around the corner, normalcy. But really and truly, that didn't transpire, and so but. We started turning our attention to our staff and guests' well-being in preparation for when we would be reopening, when the borders open. So we rolled out the protocols. The tourism product development company, very instrumental, helped with their mandates and protocols. And so the hotels in general started investing in a lot of safety infrastructure, PPEs, training, extra training on health and safety, etc. Also, as we heard, the resilient corridor, which was a brilliant vehicle, where previous chairman and president, I should say, was very instrumental in establishing that also was put in place. So by midsummer, the stage was set for our borders to reopen and travel to return with visitors in tow. We were hopeful. So as we soon learned after, though, this wasn't going to be the case, and the world still seemed to almost be paralyzed by the pandemic, and so we we had very few visitors who were traveling. Whether they could or wanted to, even with the best intentions, it just wasn't happening. It was just too soon. So what happened next? The financial devastation of the pandemic began to take hold. This naturally had a trickle-down effect to all our partners, the local economy, suppliers, linkages in general, and so it was tough. I mean, we really had been through the ringer. Those properties that could feasibly reopen, we pivoted and turned to our local market for a source of some incremental income. And even today, where that remains helpful, it was never a sustainable business proposition, just based on the cost structure of hotels in general. So as summer painfully rolled on and we burned cash, and hotels continued to just try and stay afloat. Even when our borders opened, again, people were traveling. Yeah, visitors weren't coming at, just too many barriers, too many challenges. And so this, as you can imagine, was a very precarious situation, especially for the smaller hotels and operators who were soon forced to call on their bank managers. And some very interesting conversations, as you can imagine. Many of, but to kudos given and to be very pleased to say, happy to say that they really did put their money where their mouth was, and they really lent support. Whether it was moratoriums, preferential loans, et cetera, and again at that time, remember now we're banking, we're basing a lot of our assumptions that winter was on the way, winter 2021. So that would bring some relief, and we could start to service the debt and so on. But guess what? That also turned out to be just yet another loop in the roller coaster ride, and I keep referring to it as that because it really is. So our borders had remained open, but and again, let me give kudos and congratulate our Minister of Health, all the work that they did to keep the numbers down, to keep our borders open, not to lock down again, which was extremely important to us, and advocacy with their JHTA, President and Minister Bartlett. So the problem was that a lot of the source markets, the UK, they all started to experience, Canada, a second wave, maybe a third wave in some cases. So the red flags begin to wave again, and even higher. And through the spirit of great partnership again and advocacy from the GHTA and government throughout a lifeline, I call it, amongst many, but there was a grant that was set up, which was disseminated by Exim Bank especially for the small hotel operators, and that really helped us to again keep our heads above water. So very very grateful, but keeping in mind we're still struggling. Industry still fighting to survive. Similar timing though, earlier this year, the approval of the vaccines had been announced. So finally, there was some good news for the industry, something tangible, right? And we started to feel that, well, there's hope. The other piece of promising news was that the hotels' COVID protocols were proving to work. And you heard President mention the fact that even though we're frontline frontline workers based on the nature of the service industry. None of our team members were known to contract the virus from a guest. So again, kudos to all my small hotel, well, the entire industry for the great work. The resilient corridor, it worked, it really did, and I still have to stress that because these protocols, the distancing, the wearing of a mask, I mean, even with vaccine coming along, sanitizing, we still got to maintain size of crowd. We have to maintain that. We have a long way to go, right? And so it's important that we keep that message strong. We have a great program with the GHTA that we're spreading the word as much as we can, and just adhere to them strictly. So, all right, let's jump ahead to today. So. As you heard, and you heard the figures Minister mentioned, and President Clifton had mentioned, the rollout of the vaccine. You heard, especially in our major source markets. So it's happening. We're beginning to see some pickup in our forward bookings for winter 2021-22. We're starting to see some travelers. And so really the light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter, and it's not a train, right? It's happening. We feel it. We have a lot of work to do still. And just for example, I wanted just to throw in there that what you're finding too, and we're finding particularly the Inn, is that 95% of our visitors, they have been vaccinated. In fact, they weren't. It's only because they have been inoculated, whether it's 2 shots or the 1 shot, Johnson & Johnson. They're being inoculated, they feel safe to travel, and they're moving again. And so now, it brings us to this whole discussion of, we starting to roll out our vaccinations, and the conversation again around equity, availability of vaccines for us, and hesitancy and work we have to do, and also, what about those folks that have been vaccinated, whether they're visitors coming in and to our island or residents returning home, and Jamaicans returning home, if they've been vaccinated, how can they benefit? Where can we relax some of the protocols for entry? Or, the truth is, we want to get to that herd immunity. We want to get to a point where we can get rid of the masks. We can move around in, our lives, get to some more normalcy. Similar to maybe not always the best example, but look at I was going to say the US, but look at the UK. So, they've done it. The vaccination program is working, and it's the big elephant in the room, and I know there's going to be some further deliberation and ideas where that is. So I want to leave it there just as we look at how do we progress from here with our recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyle. No, you made some good points there. We had a collaborative effort between among the GHTA, the Ministry of Tourism, and the other government agencies during the whole shutdown period. At the onset of COVID, and we were able to get some workable measures to reopen our industry. And to that we're grateful. We're thankful to Minister Bartlett, thanks to the Ministry of Health, Minister Tufton, and Minister of Finance, Minister Clark, who worked out some of the benefits for us so that we could continue to operate. But I must say special thanks to John Biles, who was the concept creator behind the whole resilience corridor, and that has served us well throughout the pandemic. It has allowed us to remain safely, to open safely, to operate safely. And as both President and you alluded to, there's been no known transmission within the resilience corridor. And I hear some talk about there why we don't shut back down on tourism. You know, why are we opening up to tourism? But you know, let's not be hypocrites there. We're getting the COVID, the vaccine is being transmitted by our own people and not from the tourists. So let us just hit the nail on the head. And I know Minister won't say it, but I will say it. It's our own Jamaicans in their regular practices that they do out of their roads, in their yard, whatever, and not in the hotels. The hotels, the tourism establishments, the airports, you know, all tourism entities are abiding by the tourism protocols, the health and safety protocols, which were put in place. And we encourage the other sectors, the people in general, to just jump on board and adopt those protocols so that we can get back to some level of normalcy. You know, I notice our numbers are going down. So kudos, you know, to everybody who's playing a part in the wider public to ensure that our numbers go down. So thanks a lot, Kyle. We now move on to our next presenter, who is our Director of Tourism, Mr. Donovan White, who was appointed Director in February 2018, bringing to the Jamaica Tourist Board, the JTB, over 20 years as a senior executive in marketing and business development, a strategist and further enhancing Jamaica's reputation as the premier destination in the global marketplace, pursuing an aggressive and robust marketing agenda with a keen focus on technology, all with a view to exceeding our major growth goals. Since taking over the helm, Donovan has strategized to ensure the destination continued on its growth trajectory. For 2 consecutive years in 2018 and 2019, Jamaica exceeded the 4 million mark for total visitor arrivals. Well done to the JTB team. White has placed greater emphasis on technology, guiding the implementation of a number of award-winning digital activations, including Join Me in Jamaica and the hugely popular Escape to Jamaica. He spearheaded the launch of the destination's Heartbeat of the World campaign, strengthening the island's position as a global culturally relevant brand. Under his leadership, the destination has re-entered the Asia markets of Japan and India and is poised to experience growth from those areas. An avid sportsman, White won many medals at the annual National Boys Champs during his secondary school years. Boy, we never know that director. Currently, he is the director of the Premier League Clubs Association, co-chair of the marketing subcommittee of the Jamaica Football Federation, and president of the Waterhouse Football Club. Them commenting in the Premier League. So, he's a graduate of the University of New Orleans, where he earned an undergraduate degree in marketing, followed by an executive MBA from the Telecoms Academy in the United Kingdom. Ladies and gentlemen, our Director of Tourism, the affable Donovan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Good morning to all our external viewers of today's very important seminar. First, let me start by thanking our Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Edmund Bartlett, for inviting me to be part of this very, very important discussion forum today. I'd like to also especially greet my colleague panelists, including yourself, Chairman Omar Robinson of the Knowledge Network from the Tourism Linkages Network, Clifton Reeder, President of the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association. Soon to join us, I understand, Professor Peter Figueroa, Professor of Public Health, Epidemiology, HIV and AIDS from the University of the West Indies, and Kyle Mayes, General Manager of Jamaica Inn. This virtual session and the information we take from it is crucial as we are heading into a pivotal period for the recovery of the vital Jamaica tourism industry. Today, I want to take some time to examine the best practices for markets that have accelerated levels of vaccinated populations and how they're handling the opening of their individual tourism sectors. I will also share our recommendation to bridge the gap between inoculation and a tourism rebound, given the fact that we are in the early stages of our own vaccination program. Finally, I want to shed some light on vaccine equity and the risk to our industry should inoculation rates not accelerate quickly. As you well know, and has been said, the global pandemic impacted the Caribbean immensely because we are so heavily dependent on tourism. The Caribbean Tourism Organization, CTO, indicated that tourist arrivals to the region declined some 11 million in 2020, down nearly 67% from the record 32 million tourists in 2019. The effects of the pandemic were felt hard in Jamaica. The revenue generated through airport charges and taxes, guest accommodation room tax, general consumption tax, tourism enhancement fund collections, cruise taxes, and other government taxes essentially evaporated as the industry shuttered. Here you can see an illustration of the very steep declines in visitor arrivals by air and by cruise. In some cases, above 2/3 of the arrivals pretty much evaporated during 2020 and is still in rebound mode. Let me share with you some numbers that will help illustrate just how hard we were hit. In 2019, tourism contributed 9.8% to GDP, nearly $207 billion, and accounted for 17% of total foreign direct investment. Compare that to 2020, when Jamaica lost more than $108 billion in retained visitor expenditure, and you begin to get the picture of how hard we have been hit. Jamaica's tourism sector accounts for some 12.6% of the labor force, employing around 170,000 workers across the industry. As you will see from this chart, the numbers reached as high as 178,000 pre-pandemic in January of 2020. And you heard the aspirations, as Kyle Mays mentioned earlier, that we had in the winter of 2020 heading into 2021 before the pandemic. 90% of these staff were laid off in March 2020, and in the transport and subsectors, this percentage rose to as high as 97%. As of December 2020, some 30% of tourism workers have been brought back on a full-time basis, and another 10 to 20% part-time and or on reduced wages, meaning at least 85% of tourism employees at December 2020 remained out of work. As I mentioned earlier, though, this is not just a Jamaica problem. Tourism drives the economic development around the world through job creation, new business investment, and infrastructure improvement. And it is incredibly important to destination Jamaica and the world to see it return to its full force. So let's examine some best practices this morning, realizing the impact on the people of the world and the global economy. Nations have come together to encourage vaccination against COVID-19. As of early April, the global vaccination campaign has hit some 345 million doses, but North America and Europe far outpace most countries in Asia and Africa. Let's therefore look at somewhere like Israel as an example where the vaccination program has been deemed a success. Israel, in fact, is one of the most vaccinated countries, and as of May 4, has administered nearly 10.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. Of its 9 million residents, 60% have received at least one dose and 56% is fully vaccinated. Their population has very low levels of vaccine hesitancy due, in part, to their strategic communications program that has helped ease any concerns amongst their populace. Daily life in Israel is approaching normalcy, though indoor mask mandates are still in place and outdoor mask mandates are just removed in mid-April. Israel tourism sector has remained closed through their vaccination campaign and will reopen to vaccinated foreign tourists beginning May 23. the country sees its main challenge as safely reopening without allowing another surge in infections, especially with new variants. To prevent this, Israel is beginning to opening only to small groups of tourists and expects to wait until at least July for all tourists to be allowed. Despite their efforts amongst their own population, the country is struggling to convince travelers that it's safe to visit, as well as battling quarantine requirements in many countries upon visitors' return home. Travelers to Israel need a negative PCR test beginning before boarding their flights and a negative serological test upon arrival in Israel. The goal is to have test results within 10 hours of arrival in order to prevent the spread of the virus. Luckily for Israel, the United States sends the largest percentage of tourists to its destination, and several airlines are now launching more direct routes to Tel Aviv. Currently, the government is in discussions with other countries, including the United States, to determine how to validate vaccination certificates. Speaking of the United States, about 2 in 5 American adults are now fully vaccinated for COVID-19, as the rate of new coronavirus infections continues to decline. The US is averaging 2.4 million reported vaccinations per day over the past week. The good news is that the rate of new infections is also declining. The country is reporting an average of 49,000 cases per day, according to data from Johns Hopkins University, down from more than 70,000 just 2 weeks ago. But, let's take a closer look home. So I then say to myself, what about the Caribbean? At this point, most Caribbean countries require a negative test within 72 hours of departure in order to enter the country, and may require a negative test upon arrival. Rules for quarantining while awaiting the results of the second test are varied, but most countries do not require it. These rules, of course, have evolved from the early days of the pandemic when borders were essentially closed. At the initial height of the pandemic in April 2020, more than 3.9 billion people, about half the world's population, were under stay-at-home orders. With the emergence of COVID-19, virtually all governments imposed international travel restrictions. Currently, 49 countries completely bar international travel, while a myriad of others restrict travel to or from certain countries or regions. Even open countries often place barriers to travel, such as requiring tests or quarantines. As vaccine rollout worldwide and we inch ever closer to herd immunity, some Caribbean countries are waiving the negative tests or quarantine requirements for vaccinated travelers. For example, no COVID test is required for fully vaccinated travelers with proof of vaccination in the Bahamas and Belize. In the British Virgin Islands, a negative test is required, but vaccinated travelers can forego the mandatory 4-day quarantine. Both Haiti and Dominican Republic have open borders with no requirements for entry. Currently, the Dominican Republic has some 3.6 active active COVID cases out of every 1,000 persons living in the DR, and about 9% of its population has been vaccinated. I anticipate we will continue to see this trend rise as more and more people get vaccinated and countries look at ways to encourage visitation. Here in Jamaica, we will continue to evaluate the situation and work closely with our Ministry of Health and Wellness to determine the safest ways to proceed based on current conditions. As always, Jamaica has taken a leadership position in responding to the crisis. Early on, we put in strong protocols, as you've heard spoken about already in this session, into place through the Jamaica Cares program, and have seen other countries begin to emulate our efforts. Jamaica has received high praises for proactive, measured response to the crisis and developing innovative programs to guide the reopening process in a safe manner. Since we reopened our borders in June 2020, we have welcomed approximately 1.5 million visitors to Jamaica. That number pales in comparison to our pre-pandemic numbers, so it's our responsibility to examine ways to safely increase our rate of visitation. One initiative that will help to drive these numbers is our program to vaccinate our frontline tourism and transportation workers. This reinforces our commitment to our people as well as to our visitors. In turn, our visitors will feel more confident in visiting, knowing that tourism workers that they're interacting with would have been vaccinated. It is also a way to ensure the health and safety of visitors and as well our tourism workers, and indeed the wider population. Additionally, we know that most effective campaigns are those that are partnerships between public and private sectors. And it's in each sector best interest to work closely together and provide the educational tools and resources to ensure the vaccination program is indeed a success. We recognize the vital role the tourism sector plays in our economy and our growth as a nation. We are encouraged to see our number of visitors continue to rise as we progress through 2021. While we are experiencing an increase in visitation and research is showing more and more travelers are eager to travel, there is a great risk that progress will be lost if the vaccination rate does not accelerate. As we speak, India is in the midst of a crisis as cases surge to unmanageable levels. COVID-19 is also spiking in places such as Thailand, Turkey, and closer to home, Costa Rica, which is something the travel industry did not expect so soon after vaccines were made available. This is, of course, due in large part because the vaccination rates are lagging globally, particularly in the low and middle income countries. First dose vaccination levels are currently at 59% in Israel, 51% in the UK, 44% in the US, against 4.6% in Jamaica and less than 1% in South Africa. Scientists have warned that if the vaccination rates do not accelerate, we risk another global outbreak with more variants emerging. So now we must step up and speak out about vaccine inequity and take a bigger role in addressing the issue if the travel industry is to return to any sense of normalcy. Additionally, we must address vaccine hesitancy. For regions such as North America and indeed the greater Americas, the issue of vaccine hesitancy among populations of color is a valid public health concern. Research has indicated that vaccine hesitancy is at 23% in the US, and that as a result, outbound recovery from the US could be affected. Vaccine equity and hesitancy are core problems that are preventing the full recovery of the tourism industry globally and impacting our valuable tourism workers here in Jamaica. For the global economy to recover, it is imperative that we address both. So in closing, it is important that we continue to look at best practices across the world, as well as examine our own policies to protect our people and present a safe destination for all to experience. Additionally, we must address the root issue of vaccine equity and hesitancy to ensure a full recovery of the travel industry and the broader global economy. Together, through cooperation education, and most importantly, communication, we can ensure better days are ahead as we learn from both our mistakes as well as our successes. I thank you for listening today and hope we have a robust discussion.
Thank you very much, Director. No, the whole topic of vaccine hesitancy is an issue even in the US, which is our main source market. You know, hopefully we've seen a large percentage, a fairly large percentage of their population being either one first dose, receiving first dose, or two doses. We hope that, you know, I think there were 5 or 6 million people who never came back for their second dose. We hope that they will wisen up and go back. But, you know, we need that robustness to continue both in the US, in our source markets, Canada, UK, and some of the other countries where we do get our visitors from. And also in Jamaica, we encourage as many persons to get vaccinated. I tell you, we've seen the devastation that COVID has brought in other people's lives. Marky, we've lost over 700 persons, but you know, there's millions more who have died, who wish they could have had this vaccine, you know, if they had access to this vaccine. And as doctors would say, any vaccine is good. It gives you protection. And with that, I want to segue into the presentation by Professor Peter Figueroa, who is the Professor of Public Health, Epidemiology, and HIV/AIDS at the University of the West Indies, Kingston, Jamaica, where he has developed a doctoral program in public health. He was formerly the Chief Medical Officer at the Ministry of Health, and for many years, the Chief Epidemiologist and Director of the National HIV/STI Program in Jamaica, and a Scientific Secretary of the Caribbean Health Research Council. He has represented the government of Jamaica on regional and international health-related agencies and conducted consultancies in the Caribbean, Africa, and the Middle East. He has provided technical advice to many Caribbean countries and the CARICOM Council on Human and Social Development on a variety of public health issues since the 1980s. He has served on the Scientific Advisory Council of the Caribbean Epidemiology Center, and since 1989 has been the chair of the Caribbean Immunization Managers Annual Meeting. He's currently part of the Technical Advisory Group for Immunizations, conveyed by the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO. In May 2019, Dr. Peter Figueroa was recognized by the World Health Assembly as a health leader for his substantial contribution to public health in Jamaica, the Caribbean, the Americas, and the world over the past 4 decades. Ladies and gentlemen, we're blessed to have Professor Peter Figueroa with us this morning. Professor, over to you.
Thank you, Omar, for that very kind introduction. And thanks to the organizers for inviting me to this very important panel. Are you hearing me clearly and seeing my slide?
Yes, Professor, we are.
Okay, thanks, Omar. Honorable Minister, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all. I'm going to focus on trying to build confidence in the COVID vaccines, which really our best hope to control the pandemic. I am a member of the World Health Organization Strategic Group of Experts, working group on COVID vaccines, and we meet regularly each week on this subject. I have no financial interests or conflicts. As you've heard, there have been over 155 million persons confirmed with COVID, over 3 million deaths. And we're now going over 15 months where the pandemic has really transformed life. Now, if we look at the situation in Jamaica first, we know that we are just coming out from a massive surge of COVID cases that has caused hundreds of deaths. And we must learn the lessons from this. What were the reasons for this surge? We can't be absolutely sure. But remember, respiratory viruses circulate more widely during the cooler months. But in addition, we have our social activities over Christmas and New Year where people interact, and perhaps there was a bit of COVID fatigue with the non-pharmaceutical measures, as well as a little complacency, as well as, no doubt in my mind, that the variant, what is known as the UK variant, all probably combined to give us this surge. And we may have been a bit slow in enforcing the lockdown. And I want you to think about that. We must learn the lessons, but I'm going to try and illustrate that as we go through. Now, you've heard that there have been over 30 million cases with over 500,000 deaths in the US. We are nearing 800 deaths in Jamaica. And I put some figures there for Trinidad, over 12,000 cases, Barbados just under 4,000. You know, this is a serious disease and we must not treat it lightly. And I say this because it is true, the majority of adults, especially younger adults, they are more likely to get a mild or moderate symptoms that really doesn't bother them too much. It's just like a bad flu in the most instances. However, 1 out of 7 persons, 14%, do get a severe disease, and this may require hospitalization. And as many as 6% may actually be critical. And it's the severe cases and critical that lead to death. And you know, we're now seeing where many of the persons who do have severe cases may develop longer term symptoms, maybe 1 out of 3. Among older persons, persons over 80, 1 out of 4 are likely to die if they get COVID. Among those over 70, maybe 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 10, those over 60 are also at high risk. This is a serious condition that we must not take lightly. We know the clinical features now: fever, cough, fatigue, shortness of breath, a variety of symptoms. You may lose your sense of taste or smell, headache, but you know, you can even get confusion, dizziness, diarrhea. The symptoms are quite myriad. You have to be alert to this. Now, we need to be clear on how it is spread from person to person. Primarily, persons who are infected, who are coughing, sneezing, talking, singing. So it is felt that perhaps 40%, 41% of cases are spread from person with symptoms. However, what many people do not realize is that before you become ill, for 2 to 3 days before illness, you are highly infective. So you could be interacting with someone who does not know they have COVID, but they're already infected. They're going to get ill within another day or 2. 35% of all cases may well be spread from those persons who are pre-symptomatic, and then maybe a quarter of the cases spread from those persons with no symptoms. This is why you have to wear your mask, maintain your distance, and basic hygiene. There's no need for deep cleaning of institutions if someone is infected. Basic hygiene, basic cleaning is sufficient. We have to continue with promoting the measures that help to prevent spread. And we know these. What is particularly important is restricting crowds indoors. I've already mentioned masks and physical distancing. Now, towards the end of last year, we know there was a surge in the United States and UK, Europe, a surge of cases, as this graph shows. once you have a surge of cases, we know that hospitalizations are going to increase. The red line in this graph follows the blue line, which are new cases. Once you get new cases, you're going to get severe cases requiring hospitalization. And within 3 weeks, you're going to get deaths. You notice the deaths in red, tracking the number of cases. Thus, when we saw that surge a couple months ago at the turn coming into late January, February, once we see that surge, you have to take decisive measures. Otherwise, you're going to see within 3 weeks a significant increase in deaths. Now, towards the end of last year, we know that US was facing a major surge, Europe and Canada. Look at Japan. Japan has been able to maintain very few cases, relatively speaking, for a massive population. Why? Everyone wears a mask there. They avoid close contact and they avoid crowds, especially indoors. You know, so there's a lesson there for us. Now, the variants, these are mutated strains, mutations, and not all the mutations you get from the virus that causes COVID are going to cause a problem. Most of them do not, but some are showing themselves to be able to transmit more readily. So in UK, you can see took off towards the end of last year, also in South America and Europe, South Africa and Europe. Now, at the turn of the year in January, the vaccines towards the end of last year and this year started to roll out the vaccines. Over 1 billion vaccine doses have now been administered globally. Israel is way ahead. 60% have got at least one dose. And you can see in the UK, the US over 250,000 people vaccinated. You can see that they're rolling out the vaccine. What has this meant? It has meant a dramatic decline in new cases in the US, in Europe, in Canada, all due to rolling out the vaccine. And you can see that the reported new daily COVID cases in the US has come right down from over 250,000 a day in early January to just under 50,000 a day in early May. So this is a really dramatic decrease. And we've also seen a significant decline in the number of hospitalized cases in the US. And look at the decrease in deaths. Now, what is important is that the strategy in the UK, they decided to use one dose to vaccinate more of their population, whereas in the US, they tended to give everyone 2 doses. You can see that the UK had a much more dramatic and deeper decline in the number of deaths because the modeling shows, and now life shows, that it is better to give more persons 1 dose rather than to try and give everybody 2 doses as you roll out the campaign. Now, globally, there was a huge peak of cases in January. And with the rollout of the vaccine, you can see the significant decline. But then, just in the last month and a half or so, it has exploded again. And this explosion of global cases is due to the massive surge in India, where they thought they were doing so well. And then they have got new variants. They had a religious festival in northern India where millions of people came together. They had elections where hundreds of thousands of people came together, and they may have got a bit complacent. They thought that they were doing fine, and look at the challenge that they have had there. We cannot put our guard down. Now, the COVAX facility has been established in order to ensure all countries have access to safe, effective, affordable vaccines. And the aim was to get at least 2 billion doses by the end of this year, so that every country globally could get vaccine for 20% of their population and end the acute phase of the pandemic. However, the manufacturing capacity, it's estimated at just over 7 billion for this year. The COVAX goal was to secure 2 billion. They actually have contracts to secure 1.5 billion, and they had planned to distribute just under 200 million doses by the end of May. However, they've only been able to distribute just over 40 million doses. The reason for this is global vaccine manufacturing capacity is limited, and the developed countries have purchased most of the vaccine. A few developed countries, you could say, are actually hoarding the vaccines, but they are also not just blocking the export of vaccines, but also the raw materials that are essential to produce the vaccines, which the manufacturers in India, Indonesia, and Brazil need. Those are the 3 countries outside of the developed world that have the capacity to produce vaccines. And of course, India has had to stop exporting their vaccine, which is the AstraZeneca, because of the massive surge that they are facing. So they're trying to vaccinate their population. And this means that many developing countries have got little or no vaccine. Now, with whatever vaccine we do get, and the supply is going to continue to be limited in the foreseeable future, it's critical to preserve the health service. And health workers are at a very high risk of getting COVID. We've had quite a few who have got COVID and a few who have died. So we have to get them vaccinated. We also need to vaccinate our older adults, because as the curve shows, the death rate increases significantly with age. So do the comorbidities. Older people tend to have more comorbidities, other diseases. That means that you're more likely to have a severe case of COVID. So using age as a criteria for vaccination is a sensible thing to do. Vaccinate the most vulnerable, the elderly, first, along with the essential frontline workers like the health workers. Now, many persons have articulated concerns with the COVID vaccines. How come they were developed so rapidly? Could the trial, some people believe the trials were too short to really assess safety. And then these modern techniques, the messenger RNA vaccines, and there are lots of questions about the new variants, and then a variety of conspiracy theories, which really take a vivid imagination to actually create. Let me just say that one of the reasons why these vaccines have been developed so quickly is because the US government and other governments have put billions of dollars into the preparation and accelerated development of these vaccines. You can see that a number of companies at the top have received over $2 billion each. So it's not just the private companies that have invested money, time, and effort. The governments and Gates Foundation, CEPI, which is the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, an international organization, the Chinese, the Indian government, all of them have put significant money into funding for vaccines. What many people do not realize too is when we had the global pandemic due to the severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, starting in Hong Kong. And that condition has a fatality rate of 1 in 3. And that it's caused by another coronavirus that is a cousin to the coronavirus that causes COVID. So from then, they've been working on developing a vaccine against the spike protein. This work was accelerated in 2012 when the Mediterranean respiratory syndrome outbreak, which people get it from camels, and that stimulated further research because that is also due to a coronavirus. So when the Chinese scientists isolated the coronavirus that causes COVID, and they shared the sequence of the genome of this virus internationally, those companies that had a vaccine ready for SARS simply adjusted the sequence of that vaccine in order to produce a COVID vaccine. And they could take it to animal studies immediately, within a week. And then they could start doing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. So this is how they were able to develop the vaccine so quickly. And in parallel, the manufacturing capacity was expanded because the governments invested millions and billions of dollars to ensure that we had a vaccine quickly. Now, there are many different types of platforms to form vaccines. If you look at the whole vaccines, we have a polio vaccine, which is polio drops, which is a live attenuated vaccine. We're all used to the polio drops. Whereas the polio injection vaccine is an inactivated whole vaccine. Then you have the replicating viral vectors or the non-replicating viral vectors, where they take another virus, shell it out, and use the shell just to introduce the proteins or the RNA or DNA into our muscle, where our cells then take up that and produce our immunity. And then you have other types of vaccines like the new messenger RNA and protein or virus-like particles. We don't have time to get into this. But let's focus on the vaccine we've been using, the AstraZeneca vaccine. So adenovirus can cause a common cold. So what they do is they shell it out, take out any active material. It cannot replicate, but they put some RNA that can code the protein that mimics the spike protein of the coronavirus. So when it's injected into your arm, our white cells take it up, and then our white cells produce these proteins that mimic the spike protein. And our body responds to those proteins and develops, our immune system develops protection against the coronavirus spike protein if we are infected. There's nothing infective in the vaccine itself. There's no adjuvant, no additional thing. Adjuvant is something that helps to make the vaccine more effective, but that's not used with the coronavirus vaccines. This vaccine has now been given to well over 100 million people. It's highly effective and safe. We have found that there's a rare blood clot, very rare, but overall, persons who are vaccinated with the AstraZeneca vaccine have less blood clots than what you find in the general population. The safety profile is very encouraging. You can get a local reaction. Your arm may swell up, you may get some fever, headache, or you feel mashed up and tired when you get the vaccine. that tells you the body's system is developing, is responding to the vaccine, and you're developing protection. Those symptoms usually go within a day or two. Now, when the Pfizer and Moderna messenger RNA vaccines were rolled out, they found that very few people, there was a rare severe allergic response where they got anaphylaxis. And what they realized is that persons who have had a previous anaphylactic reaction to a vaccine or an injection should not take the messenger RNA vaccine. There have been no deaths associated with that. It was occurring at 2 per million doses. And now, because they've excluded people with a history, they're hardly seeing any anaphylactic reactions. But you must observe all vaccinated persons for 15 minutes and 30 minutes if they have a history of allergies. Now, with the AstraZeneca, they are finding that approximately 5 persons for every 1,000,000 doses may get a rare blood clot to the veins draining the brain or to the abdominal veins. It usually occurs between 3 to 16 days after you get the vaccine, but you get early warning signs. You get severe persistent headache or severe persistent abdominal pain. It's so severe, you must go to your doctors. Doctors are now alert to this. So anyone who develops a symptom like that, you go to the doctors are alert, and they put you under care immediately. And we should be able to manage this condition much better now. But it is extremely rare, 5 per million doses. Now, if you have 1 million persons over the age of 50, you will expect 5,000 of them to get blood clots every year. You see, the question of blood clots are common in the population. Doctors are used to dealing with this. So anyone with severe COVID, over 50% of them are likely to get a blood clot. That is why when you go to the hospital with severe COVID, most likely you're going to be put on a blood thinner or an anticoagulant. Now, nearly all adults can take the COVID vaccine safely. People with comorbid conditions, hypertension, lung disease, kidney disease, all these conditions, it is more important that you get the vaccine. Obesity, that's a comorbid condition. It is more important because if you get severe COVID, you're more likely to get severely ill and die. So all of these people can take the vaccine, even if you've had cancer and you've been treated. If you have HIV, you can take the vaccine only if you're actually getting chemotherapy for cancer treatment now or radiotherapy and your immunity is very low. Do you need to wait until you've completed that cancer treatment? And persons with HIV, the majority of them are on antiretroviral drugs, you take your vaccine. Even if you're not on antiretroviral drugs, unless your immunity is very low, you can take the vaccine. If you're acutely ill with any condition, make sure you recover from that acute illness. And within a few weeks, once you've recovered, you take your vaccine. Persons who have COVID and are acutely ill with COVID should wait and recover before they take the vaccine. If you do take the vaccine, it's not going to harm you, but we're wasting the vaccine. In any case, a person who gets COVID is immune from COVID for at least 6 months, in fact, now 7 months. So we say, if you have had COVID and it's confirmed, wait 4 to 6 months before taking 1 dose of the vaccine, because you already have immunity, natural immunity, and 1 dose after 4 to 6 months will boost that immunity. You don't need 2 doses. Pregnant women can take the vaccine. Because the trials do not include pregnant women, we're cautious. where you say, weigh the benefit and the risk. But we're now getting more experience that tells us that the vaccine will not trouble a woman or her unborn child. But if you're concerned, you can wait. Breastfeeding women should take the vaccine and they can continue to breastfeed. They now have done studies in teenagers with the Pfizer vaccine, and it shows that it is safe and it is efficacious. And hopefully they'll do a trial with AstraZeneca. They're about to start with young people. It's important in due course that we get our teenagers vaccinated. I'm rounding off now. Now, one dose of AstraZeneca vaccine is 70% effective against severe disease, right? One dose protects you from severe disease. And it will, occasionally, people will get minor symptoms, but it is rare to have one dose of AstraZeneca and get severe COVID and need to go to a hospital. But remember, if you get the vaccine today, it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks before you develop protection from that first dose. So in those 3 to 4 weeks after you get your first dose, you are still at risk of getting COVID. You must mask, you must maintain your distance. Remember also, the vaccine prevents disease. We're now realizing that it also makes it less likely for you to get infected and have asymptomatic infection. It reduces the likelihood of infection. It doesn't rule it out entirely, but it does reduce it. So one dose of the infection of the vaccine is superb. And the UK studies show that it's better to take one dose and give it to more people than to give fewer persons 2 doses. The duration of protection from the vaccine is not known, but we know it's at least 6 months, and we expect it to be well over a year, a couple years. We may need boosters in the future, but we expect it to be beyond a year. Of course, once there's sufficient vaccine, definitely get your second dose. We're going to have to monitor for new variants, and we need to promote vaccine confidence. We have to live with COVID for the foreseeable future. It's better to vaccinate more persons with 1 dose and fewer people with 2 doses, but it's not a silver bullet. We still have to use our masks and maintain physical distance. Now, this is something the tourism people can think about. I've recommended this to the government from long ago. Dogs can be trained to smell persons with COVID, just like how they use dogs to smell people with crack cocaine. So dogs could be put at the airport and you can smell out the persons who are likely to have COVID and then get them tested or put them under quarantine. People who have 2 doses of vaccine are going to be very low risk. We're going to continue to learn more about COVID. So the change, you have to prepare yourself for more change. The situation is dynamic. My suggestion to you is take the vaccine when you get the chance. This is a critical contribution you can make to rebuilding tourism safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Figueroa. I think your presentation today was very timely. It was very, very informative, and it highlighted some of the most salient points to help clear up some of the misconceptions around taking the COVID-19 vaccine. And one of the comments that we received was that your presentation needs to be shared with the entire nation, as the explanation was very clear, and more people need to hear those facts. So I want to thank you. You know, you really came and reaffirmed why we should take the vaccine. I know there is vaccine hesitancy out there, And as you said, it's better that we all get our 1 dose of AstraZeneca than more people getting 2 doses. Well, less people getting 2 doses. So thanks a lot, Professor Figueroa. We're going to open up with some questions. I know we have a few minutes until we're going to end at 12. One of which, well, 3 other questions that we received so far were about destination weddings and the protocols, the number of persons for destination weddings. I think, who is that? President Reed or Director White, who want to take that question on destination weddings, numbers and protocols. Let's see, the destination wedding market, as any other group business, has been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, mainly because of crowd control and sizes. So, I know they've suffered and they look forward to the return of visitors. So either of you, President?
Well, Chairman, I got that question just yesterday from one of our members, and we checked the tourism protocol. In fact, on page 30, it outlined how you can do your weddings, your functions within the hotels, because there are strict protocols outlined for hotel and tourism operations. And if we follow them, remember in the beginning, we basically were saying, and that's what we use for our dining rooms as well, that if you divide the square footage of the dining room by 36, you get the number of people that can fit inside there, or use 70% of your capacity. What we try to do for weddings, receptions, those kind of things, is to have most of them outside or in semi-covered areas so that we can use that rule and we can safely, because most of the times for weddings, you're dealing with close family units, and to tell you the truth, most of the weddings now are very small weddings. And that's why we are saying that as we increase in occupancies, as we get better, we need to relook at some of the protocols that we have. And of course, with the vaccination of our staff and guests coming, being double vaccinated. In fact, whilst I was on this call, I got a voice message from a guest asking the fact that she's double vaccinated, if she will have to obey certain protocols, including do a test before coming on island. So as we go along, it's going to be, as Professor said, dynamic. And we have GHTA representative working on looking at these protocols with an aim to change them as vaccination change throughout the world and in Jamaica.
Thank you very much, President. Director, I'm not sure if you want to add anything there.
No, I think President Reader captured the essence of it. I think we just have to be mindful always of the restrictions of the disaster risk management orders, because they apply across the destination. There may be some variances allowed, but those are usually specially applied for and agreed while the orders are given.
All right, thanks a lot, Director and President. All right, for President, is it mandatory for tourism workers to be vaccinated?
No, it's not, but it's strongly encouraged, because if we are going to restart tourism in a big way, we acknowledge that there are some people, because of medical reasons, because of many of the reasons Professor outlined, who will not get vaccinated. But those who are on the fence, those 23% who said that they will not get vaccinated, legally, we cannot go out there and tell them that it is a must, nor should we. We should really try to educate them, try to give them the facts, and they will make up their minds. But at the end of the day, they have to know that that personal decision that they're making may affect other people as well, because if they come into an organization, catch it themselves, it's a problem for them and it's going to be a problem for people around them as well.
Good. Thanks a lot, President. Is there any plans for another program targeted at vaccinating more tourism workers? I know both you and Minister are working towards that.
Well, in my presentation, I mentioned that as the vaccines get more and more prevalent or accessible in Jamaica, the government should run more of the type of blitz that they did over that weekend of April 11th, because it showed that they could basically get through so many more people in short periods of time. You know, having the centers within the tourism areas, tourism personnel were basically bused to them. And as I said, after that blitz, which was 12% oversubscribed, a lot of people, when they did 2 weeks after they did not see us fall down, they basically are now ready to take the vaccine. So we may have probably 60–70% of our population or more ready to take the vaccines as we speak.
Good. Thanks a lot, President. I asked if there were questions for Professor, and I was told no, but people are just impressed with the presentation where they're saying they have become more informed and they look forward to taking their vaccine. So, Prof, thank you for coming and clearing up any misconceptions. One final question: do spas now have the green light to resume facials with clients? I'm not sure. Chairman, President, I'm not sure. We probably have to get some clarification around that. Facials for clients. But I want to thank everybody for coming out today. This is the first in a number of series that we have lined up. A special thanks to our Minister, Honorable Edmund Bartlett, President Clifton Reeder, Mr. Donovan White, our Director of Tourism, Mr. Kyle Mays. Professor, thank you immensely. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I don't know how we could have managed without you. So thank you, Professor, for coming and clearing up all these misconceptions so that people want to go out there and willingly take these vaccines whenever we have more blitzes and we increase our supply. Thanks to our team at the Tourism Linkages Network, led by Carolyn McDonald-Riley, Simone, who has been tremendous with organizing this seminar for us, Renee doing social media, Phase 3, who has done all the technical work. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Next week, we'll have tourism and its impact on other sectors of the economy, where we'll feature some of the subsectors: ground transportation, energy, attraction, shopping, and that will be Friday, May 14th, between 2 to 4, I think. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Professor, thank you very much. We look forward to having you all again next week. Blessings, everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.